Welcome and thank you so much for joining us. This is 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tune in every Saturday and Sunday morning at 8 a.m. to get more local and timely advice on real estate and finance. If you missed us last week, we had a great show. You can listen to the show on facebook.com/Womack Radio. Again, that's facebook.com/Womack Radio. On today's show, we've got two great local attorneys here with us. We've got Roy Cole, a bankruptcy attorney, and Clark Ward, a divorce attorney. Both are local here in the Salt Lake City market, and we're so excited to have them on the show. First, we're going to be speaking with Clark Ward, a local family law divorce attorney. Clark, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Clint. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and your family to start off.
Sure. I actually am from Portland, Oregon. That's where I call home, although I've been in Utah since 1983. I went to BYU as an undergrad, and then I went to law school in San Diego, but came back here. I have extended family here, and I had a lot of network of friends and contacts, and I began doing legal work while I was in college. So I had a lot of contacts that brought me back here, and I've stayed here ever since.
So you've been here since '83?
Actually, I went to school in 1972 is when I started college. So pretty much since 1972, quite a while.
Okay. So you know Utah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your practice and where your office is and things like that.
Sure. I began practicing family law as a focus back in 1983. And I've always been in Salt Lake, and my practice does extend to Davis County, sometimes to Utah County, Summit County, Park City, and Tooele. That's where I primarily practice. Once in a while, you'll get a case up in Ogden, but anything further than that, it's just too far away to really be affordable for a client to have an attorney travel those distances.
And your practice is in Salt Lake?
Primarily, yes. My office is in Midvale.
Okay. Great. So there's a lot of different choices between divorce attorneys. I trust you completely, and that's why we have you on the show. Tell me why someone might choose you as a family law or divorce attorney as opposed to the several others out there.
Well, I actually ask my clients that question quite often when they come in, because there are a great number of attorneys, and there's a great number of selection. And honestly, the people tell me that they're either referred to me, which is always a great recommendation, an endorsement, or they see that I have been doing this for quite a number of years, and they feel confident that I've probably seen or been through what they're about to go through, and that I have the experience and the contacts with other attorneys, relationships with judges, and possible experts, so that I can give them a pretty good picture of what their legal options are and help advise and consult with them as the case goes forward.
So you primarily deal with divorce?
Primarily divorce, paternity cases, which involve custody and visitation rights, child support, enforcing court orders that have already been made, perhaps modifying court orders that have been made before. Those kinds of things are primarily what I deal with.
So on your divorce cases, what are some of the questions that frequently come up as you first start a case and as you go through it? What are some of the questions that come up?
Well, almost without exception, a client wants to know or have an idea of what's going to happen to him. Going through a divorce is considered to be one of the three most traumatic experiences a person could have. One is losing a child. Another one is being summarily terminated from your job, being fired. And a third is being divorced. And so you wear a lot of hats as an attorney. Sometimes you're a psychologist. they call you an attorney and counselor at law. So you do a lot of counseling, but people want reassurance that things are going to be okay when it's all said and done. It might not be what they want. It might not be a perfect situation, but they need assurance that you're going to be able to take and assume their burdens somewhat, and that you're going to be able to help work through their problems to the best that you possibly can. So a lot of the questions that I'm asked are, what's my experience? Not so much what's your track record. That's really a question that can't be answered, because if anybody says I've never lost a case, then I would say, well, then they've never taken a case that was very challenging. So any lawyer will say that you're going to lose some cases that you think you should have won. You're going to win some cases that you think you shouldn't have won. But most of the time when people come in, they don't ask so many questions as they want to get a feel for me. Is this attorney somebody that I can talk to? Do I feel like I can confide my most deep, dark secrets, the good, the bad, and the ugly with this person? Does this person sound like he's got enough experience that he can handle this? Those are the kind of questions or perceptions that people need to have answered.
And I assume with so many years of experience, that's helped you become a better counselor to your clients and be able to resolve some things that might come up during the case.
It has. It has not only my own experience and my own practice, but in my relationships with other attorneys that practice in the same area. It's quite common that we share cases with each other, we ask each other questions, and it's a very close network.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Clark Ward, a local Salt Lake City divorce attorney, family law attorney. We've got to take a break, but stay with us. We'll continue our conversation with Clark Ward. If you have any questions for Clark, or if you'd like to get in touch with him, text the words Clark Ward to 801-674-9995, and we'll get you in touch with Clark. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. Stay with us, and we'll be right back after the break.
You gotta do better now, or you'll be bankrupt.
Welcome back. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. Right now we're talking with Clark Ward, a local divorce and family law attorney here in Salt Lake County. Local professional, knows his stuff about divorce and family law. If you have any questions for Clark, please call 801-674-9995 and I'll get you in touch with Clark Ward. Clark, we were talking a little bit about what comes up, some of the questions that frequently come up with clients. Now let's go maybe into the results of a divorce. You were talking about how divorce isn't pretty. It's one of the most traumatic things you can go through, but in the end, you'll be okay. And in the end, maybe it's better to go through this. Let's talk about some of those things that can be better after a divorce.
Well, emotionally, you're putting people in a position where they are able to perhaps meet somebody that can be more compatible with their emotional needs and their personalities. Life changes us, and sometimes you grow together and sometimes you grow apart. And when people grow apart and they just can't continue as a couple anymore, then that's what precedes a divorce a lot of the time. And once in a while, I've run into a former client, and I found out that they have met somebody different and somebody that is more suitable to who they really are at that time. So that's one of the things that can come out of it. But it's a very high price to pay. It's very difficult for people financially to have to share, where they've been sharing expenses. Now they have to assume all of the expenses for themselves. And in the case of someone who has custody of children, child support is rarely adequate to really meet the needs without the assistance of another spouse. So that's one of the very difficult aspects of a divorce. Dividing up property can be difficult, but you're starting over, essentially. And both people have to feel some of the impact of the divorce when they're separating assets. Sometimes, particularly with women, in most cases, they've been out of the workforce for a long time, and now they have to enter the workforce again, and they're not very well equipped to do much more than an entry-level position someplace, and that's a very, very challenging prospect.
Yeah, I'm both a realtor and a mortgage broker, and I come across divorce quite a lot. This is a real estate and finance show, so I think that it's important that if you're thinking about going through a divorce, or if you're going through a divorce, that you meet with an attorney like Clark Ward, and you also meet with other financial professionals that can help you make a plan and get a budget, especially if you weren't working and you need to go back into the workforce. Like, we come across people that need to sell and then maybe downsize or do a refinance to get equity out. And there's a lot of different scenarios that come up when divorce is involved. And it's so important to meet with someone that can walk you through that. What are some of the other financial ramifications that you've seen through divorce?
Well, I'll give you a very specific instance, and that's the issue of alimony. If someone is receiving alimony, that's taxable income. And sometimes they forget to budget that, and they have to pay tax on that. And the amount of alimony could possibly push them into a higher tax bracket. So it's advisable to seek some advice from a CPA or an accountant when you're going through those numbers. Child support, on the other hand, is not taxable. So that's one aspect. There are tax implications of selling a home. If you receive the equity in the home, there are other tax problems with a step up in basis, for example. So those are some areas that have to be explored. Sometimes people have a joint credit card account, and one person agrees to pay that, but when they don't pay that, the other party is still liable. And so sometimes we have issues with that.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the mortgage industry. We'll see on a credit report where there was a joint account, and then the person that agreed to pay it stops paying it. The spouse or the ex-spouse kind of forgets about the card because they're expecting it to be paid. And then you go and pull their credit score, and it's down 100 points, and they have no idea why.
Right.
And so I assume that maybe sometimes you recommend to, if there's a joint account, to maybe split up those accounts during a divorce.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes we try to get people to just remove the other person from the account. But the credit card holder, they don't really care. They just want to be paid. And they don't have to regard the divorce decree that says that husband or wife is supposed to pay. Both of them are on a contract with the credit card holder to pay. And so if there can be some refinancing, or if someone can actually obtain another credit card and assume that,
transfer the balance.
Transfer the balance, exactly. And that's an easy way to take care of it.
So if there's a zero balance, there's not going to be a big deal getting someone removed. But if there's a big balance on there,
that's easy.
That's when you run into different problems. So I assume in your years of practicing family law and divorce, you've got a few stories.
Yes, I do. Thankfully, I've forgotten a lot of them. And unfortunately, most of them are rather tragic. But there are occasions that things are so unusual, so bizarre, that you never forget them. I'll give you one. I'll give you two, for example. A lady comes in, and she is quite pregnant. And earlier that morning, she had been to her doctor with her husband for a checkup. And while they were in the waiting room, the lobby, his mistress walks in, who is also pregnant.
Oh, my God.
And the mistress sees him with his wife, and she says, well, who is this woman? He says, well, this is my wife. And she said, well, you told me you were divorced. And then his wife says, who is she? And she says, I'm his bleeping mistress, and I'm carrying his bleeping child. And so the wife stands up and slaps this fellow and storms out of the room and comes to my office for a divorce.
Were there any reality show cameras around?
You can't make this stuff up. But the mistress does the same thing. She walks over to him and she slaps him, and she walks over to another attorney and files a paternity case.
Oh.
So that's a situation where I don't know how you could talk your way out of that one. And then there was another case where a lady filed for a divorce, and she was seeking custody of her children. And her husband was a very proud fellow, a kind of a fellow who you couldn't really tell him anything, and he thought that he could do it all himself, including being his own attorney. So in response to the petition for divorce seeking custody, he filed a countersuit seeking compensation for stud fees.
Have you ever seen that one before?
That's the only time I've ever seen that one.
Stud fees, huh?
Stud fees, yeah.
Wow. Well, we were talking about alimony earlier today, and just kind of out of curiosity, does Utah have a specific statute or rule? Like if you're married for a certain number of years, there's a certain number of alimony, or does it kind of vary from case to case?
The statute is actually Title 33, Title 30-3-35, paragraph 8.
Down to the paragraph.
Down to the paragraph. I know it well. The time of the marriage does not have as much to do with it. It can be a factor. There is another statute in that same statute, another sub-paragraph, where it says that marriages of short duration where there are no children, the parties or the court should consider restoring the parties to where they were before the marriage. So the length of the marriage has something to do with it, but there are three primary factors that the court looks at in awarding or denying alimony. The first is the need of the person asking for alimony. And so you go through what their standard of living or their cost of living would be. You go through their expenses and through their budget, and you try and come to a hard number of what does it cost you to live the way that you have become accustomed to living at the point where you separate, okay? And then let's just say, assume a number, $5,000 a month, nice round number. And then you look at the person who's requesting their ability to meet that need by themselves. What is their education, their work history? What can they do to offset that amount? And then whatever the difference is what the court will most likely look at in terms of an award of alimony. And then the third factor is the person's ability to pay alimony. Okay? If the incomes of the parties are about the same, it's probably not going to be an alimony case. So that's primarily what the courts look at on that.
Yeah, I've seen some cases where the husband will be ordered to pay alimony, and he's in a commission-type job, and he'll be paying a lot of alimony, maybe $5,000 or $7,000 a month,
right.
And then his commission income goes down.
Right.
In that kind of case, do you go back to the judge and?
Yes. What they do in a situation like that, when you first set alimony, is that you look at a history of his earnings. You try and get an average over a course of a few years. It's the same in construction industries or other seasonal income industries where you'll make a lot of money certain parts of the year and nothing the other parts of the year. You try and take an average. But once alimony has been set, or child support, if there has been a significant reduction in income and is due to no fault of the person who's paying, then he can petition the court and say that there has been an unforeseeable change in my circumstances. It was beyond my control, and I need some relief. And the court can consider that.
And is that something he would come back to his attorney
Yes.
for to file that petition?
Yes. Hopefully me.
Okay. And we're wrapping up here. I haven't been to any divorce cases. So when there's a couple that's looking to get a divorce, how often do you represent the husband and the wife, or do they usually get separate representation? How does that work?
Well, you cannot represent two people who have conflicting claims. I don't keep track of how many men or women I represent. Sometimes it's more than the other. I just don't keep track. But the important thing is that I represent both people on the same issue. Sometimes they're opposing. For example, I might represent a husband who's being asked to pay alimony. I might have another client who is asking for alimony. That's where experience comes into the client, is that the lawyer has been able to argue both sides of the same issue over the course of time. And so you're familiar with the arguments that the court wants to hear. And he's familiar enough with the issues that he knows what questions to ask his clients so that he can represent them better.
Yeah, and that's, we touch on this every week. It's so important to have someone that has that experience, a professional that you can trust, especially with such big financial implications as a divorce can carry. I highly recommend Clark Ward. I trust him, and I know that he has your best interests at heart and that he can help you navigate the stormy waters of divorce. If you have any questions for Clark, call me at 801-674-9995, and I can get you in touch with Clark. You can also text the word divorce to 801-674-9995, and I'll get you in touch with Clark Ward. Such a pleasure to have you on the show today, Clark. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure's been mine, Clint. Thank you very much.
If you're just joining us, we've been talking with Clark Ward, a local divorce and family law attorney, and now coming to join us is Roy Cole. He is a bankruptcy attorney, among other things, a radio personality. He's got a whole list of accomplishments. Roy, it's great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Clint.
Tell me a little bit about your radio experience.
Oh, I used to actually up at 88.1 The Beat in Ogden at Weber State University. Used to do the news and some other things. Apparently I have a voice for radio and a face for radio. So.
Yeah, that's the joke in radio is we have a face for radio. You don't ever have to look at us. You can just listen to our amazing voices here. So great to have you on the show. We have a free lunch giveaway later in the show. Please stay with us. We've got a break. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. Welcome back. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. We've got Roy Cole here with us, a bankruptcy attorney, among several other things. Roy, tell me about your Utah ties and your family and all that good stuff about yourself.
I'm actually from Anaheim, California. I moved here when we were about, I was about 10, 11 years old. Been here ever since. Lived up in Ogden. Live up in Far West now, which is just a little north of Ogden, and been practicing law in Weber County for about 15 years now.
Where'd you go to law school?
Went to Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha, Nebraska.
Heck of a fun place.
Yeah, they have a med school there too, don't they?
Medical school, physical therapy, pretty much anything you want.
Is that pretty much a college town? Lots of partying and.
Well, you've got University of Nebraska very close, so you can imagine. It gets a little rowdy on the weekends.
Okay.
But there's a lot of free golf times when everyone's watching the football game. So
you were able to manage learning a little bit of law while you were there, too?
Just a little.
Good. Well, tell me a little bit about your practice. Do you work for a law firm? Do you have your own practice?
I have my own office. We're up in Ogden. We're on 25th and Washington Boulevard, right heart of downtown Ogden. I've been doing bankruptcy on my own for the last 15 years. Helping people get out of the financial binds they've managed to get into.
Do you do a lot of personal bankruptcy or business bankruptcy?
Vast majority is personal. We do some business as well.
Okay. So mostly like Chapter 7, Chapter 13 bankruptcies.
Yeah, 7s and 13s is what we do. I have done a 7 on several businesses, which is just basically a liquidation. You're shutting the business down and getting out of business.
Do you recommend one over the other, a Chapter 7 versus a Chapter 13, or is it kind of case by case?
Well, it's actually case by case. Ever since the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005, they've changed how they work them. So now you have to qualify financially in order to do a 7, and you have to have the ability to pay back in order to do a 13. 7 is a wipeout of all unproductive debt. A 13 is a restructure of productive debt and some unproductive debt. But you still try to lose most of the unproductive debt.
So that's again, the purpose of this show is to get you in touch with professionals that know what they're doing. Roy has handled hundreds of bankruptcies here in Utah. He knows Utah law. Yep. He knows how to walk you through the difficulties and the questions that come up during bankruptcy. So you talked a little bit about a Chapter 7 is pretty much a wipeout, kind of a clean slate. There's certain things that don't get wiped out. What are some of the things in a Chapter 7 that might not get wiped out?
Well, I can't get rid of restitution for a crime, generally. Although the Administrative Office of Courts has expressed in the past that they're not going to go after those sorts of things.
What do you mean by restitution of crimes?
Well, for instance, let's say you're driving drunk and you hit someone and you destroy their car and you cause them a lot of medical injuries that they shouldn't have had. The bankruptcy court, if you make a stink about someone doing that to you, having had that loss, they won't discharge it. You're still stuck with it. But they also won't do things like student loans, alimony, child support. Those things all stay in place.
Because a lot of those are federal debts. I know student loans.
Student loans are federal debts.
They want their money back.
If it's a federally guaranteed loan, they're going to get paid back.
Federal income taxes?
Income taxes as well, state income taxes.
Those don't go away.
Dischargeable.
Tell me a little bit more about that. That's interesting about the restitution of crimes. So say you get in a car accident, you're driving drunk. Normally you would have some type of insurance, but would it be like medical charges that go above the insurance that you'd be liable for that would kind of stick around there?
Typically an insurance company will file a subrogation claim back against you if you're the cause of the accident. So what happens is they come back to you and they say, geez, Clint, you were out driving DUI. Not that you were, Clint. You seem like a nice guy.
It wasn't me.
It was another Clint. I swear it was another one. There's a lot of bright lights and lit noises. So. You're driving. This other individual gets injured. They come back against you. Now, if the court has come to you and said, hey, you know what? You're DUI. You've been convicted of DUI. Here are the damages as a direct and proximate result of that behavior, you're stuck with that. And you're going to end up having to pay it back at some point. Whether that's in the next year, whether it's through your insurance, or it's just you have the assets to do it, it's going to get paid back.
Wow. So you see the posters around town for not driving drunk. That's another big case there. That's something that can stick with you even after a bankruptcy. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Tell me a little bit more about a Chapter 13, what it is, what you need to do to qualify for that, and why it might be a better option.
Well, Chapter 13 is basically a restructure of the debts. We always see those late-night ads with the flag that flies that says, this is not bankruptcy. They're lying to you. It's bankruptcy. It's just a Chapter 13. Okay? We restructure debt so that you can pay back the vast majority of your creditors, anywhere from 0% all the way up to 100%. It just depends on what you're able to pay, what you're trying to keep. There's some people who are able to pay everything back. They just can't do it in the right time period that they've agreed to under contract. So under bankruptcy law, what we do is we restructure that debt so that they pay the vast majority of it back, and everyone agrees to settle for a little less, generally, than what the actual total contract would have brought them. Now, that doesn't mean that the creditors have to do that. There are some creditors who can say, we're not doing this. It's just not feasible. Our property that's holding this is worth more than what you're offering us. And that's where the attorney comes in and negotiates. The one important thing to do is you got to realize you need an attorney to do bankruptcy. You don't have to hire an attorney. Like any law, you can try and do it on your own. And lately we've had a lot of problems with paralegals out there trying to prepare bankruptcies for people with no attorney involved and taking a fee.
Is that legal?
That's what they're trying to figure out right now. Technically, as long as they're not giving legal advice, all they're doing is preparing documentation, they're fine. But the problem is we've had a lot of them who are filing these, taking more money than I would have taken as an attorney, and filing what's called a writ to file informa pauperis. So they can waive the filing fee. It's just a motion to waive the filing fee. Attorneys get paid more for big words, so of course I know the Latin. And they'll take that entire amount of money and try and get the filing fee waived. And a lot of times the filing fee isn't getting waived. And so my experience has been you get to the hearing with the trustee, and the trustee goes off about why did this get prepared by so-and-so and not by an actual attorney? what did they promise you? And it's really more an inquisition of the
paralegal
than it is of the person there who's filed bankruptcy.
So, yeah, and we bring that up over and over again. You need someone that you can trust, someone that knows the rules, probably someone higher than a paralegal to help you through these complicated matters.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned the word trustee. Explain the role of a trustee. Is there a trustee in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy?
There's a trustee in all bankruptcy cases. A trustee is basically someone who sits in for the judge. They make interim rulings that the judge approves of. That's basically what a trustee does. It's kind of like a court commissioner on a civil case or a divorce case like Clark was just talking about.
So on a Chapter 13, it's a kind of a debt restructuring. Do you basically just make a list of every outstanding debt and then go through and try to make a plan that will work for your client?
Yeah, what we do is we're required by law to file a list to include all assets and all liabilities and see what we can do to work all those out. Now, there are certain tiers of priority. Priority unsecured debt are things like taxes, student loans, but they're non-dischargeable, so you got to pay them off within the 5-year period for the most part. One of the secured debts, you got to have obviously usually a home, a car, things like that. Those are the number one debt. Those are the ones that you have to pay off. Other than the house, you have to keep it up to date. But the car would get paid off within the 5 years of the plan if it's feasible. There's a cram down we can do if there's too little value in the vehicle and has been purchased within a certain period of time. There's a lot of things we can do, but we can only do it if we have all the information.
Is there some investigation? Like, do you have clients or other people that are trying to hide either assets or debts, and you have to kind of do some investigation on that?
One of my good friends, Steve Bailey, is a trustee up in Ogden, and one of the things he tells people when we're doing hearings in front of him is, look, one of the best sources of information I have are your ex-spouses and ex-business partners, because it turns out they ain't happy with you. And the fact that you're in here now filing bankruptcy gives them all the more reason to come talk to me, and they do. And I had a lady come in, and she filed bankruptcy. We had no idea she was even having problems. Seemed like a clean bankruptcy. She'd been divorced in the last 2 years, and divorce is a huge cause for bankruptcy, along with medical issues. She came in, and she sits down, all of a sudden gets really nervous, and so I leaned over and said, well, what's the problem? She said, well, that's my ex-husband there. What's he doing here? I said, well, he was listed as a creditor, so he got notice. So he showed up at the hearing, and at the last, very end of the hearing, which is only maybe a 5 or 6 minute hearing, the trustee, which happened to be in this case my friend Steve Bailey, looks up and says, now, are there any creditors with questions? And he stands up, comes over, and he sits down. And he says, now, according to the divorce decree, you were awarded 12 horses, 12 Arabians, rather expensive horses at the time.
The husband was awarded, or the wife?
No, she was.
She was, okay.
And he said, no, what did you do with those 12 Arabians we had that were awarded to you in our divorce? And she says, oh, I think I sold them to my aunt or someone. Well, it turns out she sold them for $1 a piece to her aunt. And so that wasn't sitting real well with the trustee. He says, and also we have these 4 income properties, 3 of which you got in the divorce. And what has happened to them now? Well, we didn't know she had a methamphetamine addiction.
Oh.
She had gone in and had stripped out every wire, everything she could sell of value out of that building, out of those 3 buildings, and sold it so that she could buy more drugs.
Wow. So the properties were just sitting there stripped.
They were literally worth nothing. It's what's called economic waste.
Wow.
And the trustees do not like it. None of the judges like it.
So that's kind of a method of trying to hide assets, basically.
It is.
We've been speaking here with Roy Cole, a local bankruptcy attorney, years of practice. He knows what he's doing. I highly recommend Roy. Great professional, great financial advice. If you'd like to get in touch with Roy Cole, please call me at 801-674-9995, and I'll get you in touch with Roy. Stay with us. On the other side of the break, we'll continue our conversation with Roy. We've also got our free lunch giveaway and some more advice on planning and budgeting, more about credit cards and creating a budget. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. Stay with us, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show on 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker. We have Roy Cole here with us, a local bankruptcy attorney. Roy, is there a legal way or a way that would hold up in court to transfer assets or put assets in another vehicle that might be exempt from bankruptcy?
You do have an exemption. You have a $2,500 exemption in a vehicle and a $20,000 or $25,000, I can't remember right offhand, exemption in a home for equity in those items. So a lot of times people are able to keep them because of those. If it's a 13, you have a $2,500 exemption, plus you've got the money that's owed on it. We're going to try and pay that off in the 60-month plan. It's usually anywhere from 3 years, 36 months to 60 months. And so if we get it done within that time period, you'll have a car free and clear at the end of your bankruptcy. The hard part is that a lot of people don't pay attention and think, wow, all my debts are gone. I'm going to go out and get me some more credit cards. And they do.
And this is in the middle of a Chapter 13?
In the middle of a 13, they start accruing more debt without asking us, and they've been told not to do that, and sometimes it slips through. They're supposed to get approval of the court in order to incur new debt. In a 7, right afterwards, you start getting credit card applications from people. And that's where people get in trouble.
Yeah, and if you missed the show last week, we did touch a little bit on that. Just the importance of paying off your credit cards and paying off your revolving debt. We talked about those who understand interest collect it, and those who don't understand interest pay it. The first step of any financial plan, whether you're going through bankruptcy or not, is to pay off that revolving debt and quit paying these exorbitant interest rates, anywhere up to 30% on a credit card. What, out of curiosity, do you see the terms and interest rates on these credit cards?
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the higher interest rates you've seen?
I've seen up to 35%
on these credit cards.
Yeah, the people can't get out of them. I mean, when you've got $3,000 on a credit card, you're making minimum payments, you got a 35% interest rate, you're not going to get out of that card.
Yeah, I've heard, I need to confirm this, but I've heard that credit cards are amortized over 20 years. So if you're paying the minimum payment and you have a $3,000 balance, they'll only collect your interest for 20 years. And after 20 years, you can finally get that credit card paid off. So a Chapter 13 can be a great tool. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that your clients have said that, I mean, bankruptcy is not pretty, but it can be a great tool. Are there things that your clients have come back and been grateful that they went through the bankruptcy after?
Vast majority, yeah. There's some who are just serial filers. They're going to file again and again and again and again. They just don't learn. And I tell people, look, if you want to stay out of bankruptcy trouble, you want to get financially sound, it's real simple. Save 10% every month, whatever you got coming in. Keep your revolving credit down to 1/3 used and pay it off as frequently as you can. It'll boost your credit score. It'll keep you where you need to be. Unfortunately, most people are like, hey, I've got $5,000 available on my credit card. Let's go to Cancun. And they do.
The unfortunate thing is they have $5,000 of credit limit, but they don't have any money to pay off that credit limit.
Yeah. And they don't think about that. It's kind of like when you're 18 and you buy your first car. You think, well, I got $100 a month I can spend on a car payment. And you buy the car, but you don't think about the gas you got to put in that car. You don't think about the insurance you got to put in that car.
Thank you so much for being patient. Now is the time for the free lunch giveaway. We've got a great free lunch giveaway today. It's Market Street free lunch for 2. And Market Street has multiple locations throughout the valley. Excellent food. Great free lunch giveaway. If you are interested in this free lunch, text the words free lunch to 801-674-9995. Again, that's a free lunch for 2 at Market Street. Roy, you talked a little bit about people that file over and over again in bankruptcy, and I think that's the source of bad spending habits, bad decisions. Is there any kind of rule against how many times you can file bankruptcy?
Oh, yeah. There are people who are into bankruptcy abuse. If you file within so many days, there's specific rules that set it out that I won't bore you with, but if you file 3 times in a year, the trustee will generally ask that you be prohibited from filing again for another 180 days, which basically gives your creditors a 180-day free window to go and knock you down. It's usually people who are filing on their own, though, who are pro se filers who do that.
You have people filing bankruptcy more than one time a year?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because when you file bankruptcy, what you have initially isn't what's called an automatic stay. That's a time period where you get to breathe deep for a minute, and your creditors have to back off and they can't contact you anymore. Well, if that bankruptcy gets dismissed, the second time you file, there is no automatic stay for the most part, or it's an abbreviated one depending on what case you're filing or what chapter you're filing. If you file a third time, there's no automatic stay period. They can just keep going full bore and do whatever they want to do to you. They don't even have to ask for relief from the automatic stay to come after you. So what you have to do is you have to be very careful about what you're doing. And so you get a lot of people who are pro se, have no attorney, who just file again and again and again, thinking that'll stop everyone, and it just doesn't.
What do you recommend for someone that either wants to or maybe needs to file bankruptcy but doesn't have any money for legal fees? What do you see in those kind of cases? Do they go to family or figure something else out?
Generally, they go to family. What I get is I get a lot of people who are being garnished. And if that's the case, anything they've had garnished out of the check in the last 90 days is going to get taken back by the bankruptcy court. So any money they've lost is going to come back into the case and be administered by the bankruptcy trustee and the bankruptcy judge. So what my job is to find someone who can help them get the money, get my fees for the moment. So let's say for a Chapter 7, you're anywhere from $1,200 to $1,400 for the whole case, filing fee, classes, and there are 2 classes you have to take now, versus a Chapter 13 where I might take as little as $600 down and then have to pay the remainder of the $3,000 fee through the bankruptcy plan over the 6-year period. Okay? Obviously, financially, it's in my best interest to file them into a 13 because I make a heck of a lot more money that way. Mm-hmm. But it's not always in their best interest. The attorney's job is to do what's in the client's best interest, not what's in my best interest. And so if they're trying to force you into a 13, you might want to step back and get a second opinion. Because unless you're trying to protect a house, a car, or there's just bills there that you have to pay, and you just need help getting them in a plan you can work with, or you just don't qualify for a 7 because you filed one too recently, there's really not a lot of reason to file a 13.
Why is a Chapter 13 more expensive in regards to legal fees?
Because it takes 3 to 6 years to get through versus 90 days on a 7.
And the attorney's involved, someone involved through that whole 3 to 6 year process?
Oh, yeah. Anytime there's a motion that comes up, we got to do it. There's a lot more work that goes into a 13.
As we're running out of time here, but what's some parting wisdom or advice you would give to anyone that might be looking into a bankruptcy or even how to avoid bankruptcy?
Best way to avoid bankruptcy, pay your bills, pay them on time. If you do have to file bankruptcy, there's a lot of good reasons for it. Loss of job, medical problems. I even had a lady who bet, believe it or not, $50,000 on black in Wendover and lost all of it.
And that was her savings?
That was her entire savings. That was every credit card.
So don't gamble your
don't gamble your life
away.
away. Don't take a gamble.
Ugh.
Be smart with your money. Do what you need to do to avoid bankruptcy. It is something you can recover from, which it didn't used to be years ago. I know I have relatives who are just absolutely judgmental about people who file bankruptcy and think they're scumbags. They're not. This is a crappy economy for everybody. Live within your means. Don't just go buy a big house because your neighbor's got a big house. Live within your means. Don't be house poor. Don't have more house than you can afford. Drive that secondhand vehicle as long as you can. If you don't have a car payment, save a car payment. Pay yourself $100 a month for the next car you're going to have. Have those savings accounts set aside for the future just in case, because you don't know what's going to happen. If you plan, you can avoid all the financial turmoil. And you'll make it through. You may make it through by the skin of your teeth, but you'll make it through.
Yeah, whether it's injury or job loss or divorce, you can sometimes go multiple years without your normal income, reduced income, no income. But if you're planning for these events and you're saving money, if you're paying off your credit cards and paying off your car, that's one thing that we're going to talk about here is, number 1, paying off your credit cards. Number 2, focusing on paying off your car and then saving up some of that money. Roy, such a pleasure to have you on the show again. Thanks again for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Had a great time.
Thanks, Roy. Just to keep going on that topic, wanted to talk more about the budgets that Roy was talking about and that we discussed last week. First step in any plan is paying off those credit cards. Like we talked about earlier, you can pay up to 35% in interest. And if you keep paying the monthly payment, you'll pay off those credit cards in a 20-year period. And that's if you haven't charged anything new to the credit card. So first step in any plan is paying off those credit cards. Come up with a plan to pay them off, pay extra each month to pay those down. If you need a plan, you can talk to any of the people that have been on the show today, and they can help you come up with a plan. I'm here for you, your local advocate for real estate and finance. If you want to set up a plan and come up with a budget, call me at 801-674-9995. Wanted to talk a little bit more about budgets. So a lot of people have car payments. So Roy brought it up, and I think a good housing expense, if you do have a car payment, is keeping your housing expense at 25% of your total income. And housing expense doesn't just include mortgage payment or rent. There's utilities, there's taxes, insurance, and all the other things that go into housing expense. And then budgeting some money for your car payment, and a car payment includes your insurance, your gas, and all the other things, and maybe even some money for savings if you get a flat tire or your car breaks down. And then budgeting savings. Try to budget at least 10% of your income for savings each month, so that when those rainy day comes, if you lose a job, if you have an emergency come up, you have some money saved up for a rainy day. Again, we're here for you. We're your local advocates. We want to see you succeed and avoid some of the catastrophes that us as professionals see on a daily basis. And that's why we're here for you, to offer you the timely truths and advice to help you succeed and prosper. This is the Clint Womack Real Estate and Finance Show. Thank you so much for listening today. We've got another great show planned for you next week. This is 860 AM, Utah's Big Talker.